let's talk about the game designer's role in a game studio. What does a game designer do? Right? What is the hierarchy? Like, where does the game designer sit? So, there's something called a product owner. Now, the product owner is usually the producer of a game. It's the person who knows the market and says, okay, we're going to build a top down tank game because top down tank games are really hot right now. Like, it's just an example, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to build a top down tank game. If you're making game by yourself, you're going to make that decision, but the game designer usually is told what to do by the product owner, who's some like boss, some executive, or some guy who knows the market really well. So the product owner tells the game designer, hey, listen, we're going to be building a top down tank game. It's going to kind of look like this. Here's a reference game, kind of like use this game as a reference. Our competitor is going to be this is how it needs to look like, etc., etc. So then the game designer makes documentation. The documentation is basically what the game is going to be. It's like a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint of what the game is. So if you're going to be building a house, for example, if you're going to be building your own house, you're not just going to call the mystery or like the builder and say, all right, man, hey man, you can just start building whatever. Just like put one room here and then put one bathroom over there. I don't know, put a kitchen. No, no, no. You're going to have a plan. You're going to have a drawing, which is going to be like, this is the plan of the house. This is where the plumbing is. This is where the sewage is, etc., etc. You're going to actually have that plan before you start working on that game. So similarly, for a game designer, for a professional game designer, now some of you may be doing stuff by yourself, just like watching YouTube videos, and you're like, I want to build my own epic game, right? I'm sure you guys have done that. You probably did make documentation, and that's probably why it failed. Right? That's probably why you didn't finish the project, or even if you finished it, it was buggy and it didn't make any money. The reason that you guys didn't plan, you didn't make documentation. Professional game designers, professional game studios always make documentation because it's really, really important, right? Then this documentation goes to the game programmer, the game tester, and the game artist. And looking at this documentation, then the game artist is going to start creating the assets for the game. The game programmer is then going to start coding the features of the game, right? And then the game tester, once there's a build of the game ready, the game tester is going to be coming in and playing the build of the game and seeing whether the game in the documentation matches the game that the programmers and artists have made, right? And the game designer's job is to kind of oversee this process and see that everything's kind of going smoothly. So this is what the game designer's role in a game studio is, right? Now let's talk about game design documentation. Super, super important. What's the first thing that a game designer makes? A concept document. So concept document is basically kind of like a baby. Think of it as a baby game document. It's just like one or two pages, like a very rough concept document. It doesn't have all the details of a game. It's just like, okay, this is what the game is going to be. This is what the mechanics are going to be. This is what the story is going to be. Like literally one page or two page, you can just read it in 1 or 2 minutes. It's like concept document is fast. You should be able to make two, three, four concept documents really quickly. Just snap them out as a game designer. So it's not a detailed document. Okay, concept document is something really simple. And of course, this is a big part in G2M. We actually teach concept documents. We teach students how to come up with a game idea, how to create a concept document. And from there, you go to a game design doc. So, game design documentation is a very detailed document. It's like all has lots and lots and lots of detail. It can, like AAA games probably have documentation goes to hundreds, maybe 1,000 pages, right? It's huge. It has every single detail of what the character is like, what the story is like, what the game mechanics are like, what the user interface like, what each button does. Everything is clearly defined in the game design doc. That is a blueprint that I was telling you about. Like very design, very detailed one. And again, in G2M, we actually we make a concept document. From the concept document, we actually start making the game design document. Then you can also have something on a feature design doc. So, for example, in a free to play game company, you might join a company as game designer, and the game is already made, right? The game is already running, and you're in live operation. Live operation means that the game is released, and you're like adding new features, like maybe you're adding a new leaderboard, you're adding a new season pass, you're putting a new feature in a game, like some kind of ability or something. So then that new thing which you're creating for the game will have its own design documentation, which got a feature design documentation. So you as a game designer may be asked to work on a feature design documentation, right? So generally these are three different kinds of documentation that you can have in a game. Next up, once again, so this is what a game designer does on a day-to-day basis. So game designer has already created a design document, and then what's going to happen is that the programmer, the tester, and the artist are going to start building the game. They're going to be inputting art and design and code, etc. And the game designer has to watch what's going on. It's not like the game designer is going to, prepare a document and they just sit back and be like, all right, my work is done. Not really. So the game designer's job is to actually keep playing the game, because the game designer understands the game. The game designer understands what the game feels like. He or she is the one who knows really what the game is, right? So it's their job, it's a game designer's job to ensure that as the game is being built, it fits what it's supposed to be. And many times it doesn't, right? So then we have something called iteration. So the game designer informs the programmer, the tester, or the artist, and no, 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 this is not really the way it was supposed to be. And trust me, the product owner is going to be watching over you like a hawk all the time and also playing the game, because they're responsible for the game selling well. So the game designer's job is kind of make sure that whatever the game is being built according to the specification. That's really, really, really important. So this is a continuous process that keeps going on till the end of the development of the game. Right now, let's talk about game design skills. If you're a game designer, what kind of skills do you need? This is very important because a lot of confusion about this. Let me get this clear. What you need to be a good game designer. First, I would say you need experience of playing games of different genres and platforms. Now, tomorrow, there are people who want to join the mentorship program as game designers, and they come to me and say, "Sir, I want to be a game designer." So I always ask people, like we screen people who wants to come into our programs, right? So I ask them, "Hey, listen, so what kind of games do you play?" He says, "Sir, I play PUBG, and I play PUBG." So I'm like, "All right, thank you very much. Sorry, you can't be a game designer, because see, as a game designer, you need to have some experience. You need to have played a few different. See, you don't need to have played every single genre out there, but you need to have some knowledge of games. You need to have a decent knowledge of games, like little bit of shooters, little bit of games with story, maybe a little bit of mobile games, maybe a bit of casino games. Like you need to have decent all round skills. You need to have a little bit of knowledge of how different game genres and different platforms to be a good game designer. To be a good game designer, right? That's what I'm saying. Next up, good writing and reading skills, because at the end of the day, you're going to be making a lot of documentation, right? You're going to be typing, you're going to be working a lot in Word, you're going to be working a lot with Google Documents, you're going to be working with Photoshop, making mockups, etc. So you have to like to read and write. Now, this is kind of not common these days, I get it, but you have to be able to write decent English. You don't have to be Shashi Tharoor, but you need to write decent English, short, concise, precise, to be able to describe what you want without too many grammatical mistakes, spelling mistakes, etc. Right? You have to be able to communicate clearly and effectively. Now, the normal language of communication for a game designer is English, right? If you want to work for big companies like Electronic Arts, Zynga, the companies that pay really well, these have international teams. It's not that like everybody's sitting in one office in India and that's it. No, these are multinational companies. You may have a creative director who's sitting in Los Angeles, or somebody sitting in like Paris if you're working for Ubisoft, or if you're working for Rockstar, you may have someone who's sitting in the US, who every day you have calls with them. So you need to be able to communicate clearly. If your English is not that good, if you're, see, like I said, you don't have to be Shashi Tharoor, but it's more about confidence than fancy words. Okay, I know a lot of people whose English is not that great, but they have confidence, they actually manage to get it across, and it works fine, right? So you should be able to communicate clearly and effectively with people. That's kind of really important. Next, confidence and presentation. So in Gamer to Maker, I always, what we do is we make sure that from the beginning We make you put on your camera in the calls because I want people to be confident at showing themselves on camera, and we encourage people to present their own ideas. Their If they come up with an assignment, they don't just submit an assignment; they actually present their assignment to the whole class because you need to get that confidence, right? As a game designer, you have an idea; it's great. If it's in your head, you need to be able to put it out there, present it to people, show it to your team, show it to your bosses, to actually convince people this is a good idea. You have to be able to defend your idea. So confidence and presentation skills is something which is quite important if you want to be a game designer, right? And also remember, you have to deal with people with different mindsets because on one side of a game designer, you have programmers. Like programmers are very logical. Like the B follows A, C follows B. They kind of mind moves in a very, very logical direction. And on the other hand, you have artists. Artists are not logical generally. I'm being a little bit judgmental here, sorry, but generally speaking, there are exceptions. Artists are kind of more emotional. They're more about feelings, about the vibe and how things are. So remember, your job is to kind of bring them together, right? You have to make artists and programmers work together to come up with a particular experience. At the end of the day, you're building an experience, which means that you have to one moment switch into logical mode, deal with the programmer, next moment deal switch into emotional mode to deal with an artist, and then you have to switch into business mode to deal with your product manager or your producer, and then you have to switch into a different mode when you're dealing with your tester. So you are dealing with people of different mindsets within the team, and your job is to kind of make them all stick together, and at the end your job is to make sure that you make a game, right? We have some mantras in Gamer to Maker. The first mantra is the only way to learn how to make video games is to actually make them. And the second mantra is it's not about me, it's about the game. It means that it's not about your ego, it's not about what makes you happy. At the end of the day, always focus on the game, always what's good on the game, what the players enjoys, and not about like, oh, I'm sad because my idea was neglected, etc., etc., etc.